We are back at Halloween Horror Nights 30, round 2. Gonna try to get some more houses, scare zones, maybe a show. We'll see what we can do. It's a busy night, but doesn't look nearly as bad as the first night I went. So let's go see what we can hit up. Halloween Horror Nights 30. Hello everybody, welcome to another Thrill Seekers adventure. My name is Chris, and tonight I'm joined by Makana.
What's up?
First appearance on the channel, actually. I don't think you've ever been on the channel. This one.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, you've been on my other channel.
Right.
Or no, you have. You were in the SeaWorld video.
Oh, that was a while ago.
It was a long time ago.
That was like 2 years ago.
But yay, we're back. We're here at Halloween Horror Nights. It was just raining a lot, so we're hoping the crowds might have thinned out a little bit, although it doesn't look like it, so we'll see. I don't care either way. I'm just happy to be back. So let's go hit up some houses, do what we can. Should be a good night. You ready?
Oh, always.
Let's do it. All right, here we go into a new scare zone, at least for me, the 30 years, 30 fears scare zone. It's less of a scare zone and more of a photo op, but still. That's a cool, like, billboard poster thing. Oh yeah, that was barely even a thing. That was pretty sad, actually. All right, I think we're gonna go to our first house, which is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is up here, so let's go do that. All right, first house of the night is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 25-minute wait. Let's do it. All right, so we just got out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house, and I was impressed, honestly. I thought the set design was really good. They played with smells. You smell barbecue when you first go in, and then it transitions to like a rotting flesh smell. Definitely some solid jump scares in there. Overall, I thought it just was an overall very unnerving house. Definitely like creepy. That's not a movie I plan on watching just because I know there's a lot of gore and I'm not a huge gore person. But it definitely spooky, and they definitely did a great job in the house. So I thought it was solid. Anyway, I think we're going to be making our way across the park next to our next haunted house. So let's go check that out. All right, next house up is Wicked Growth, Realm of the Pumpkin. I've heard nothing but good things about this house. Excited to check it out. Let's do it. Here is the cool looking facade of Wicked Growth. Lots of pumpkins. So obviously pumpkins are going to be involved in this house. Pretty cool looking facade. I've heard there's a lot more to this house though, so we're going inside. I'll see you on the other side. All right, so we just finished up with Wicked Growth. Honestly, that was a really cool house. Definitely defied expectations when it comes to the tent houses. Usually those kind of have a bad rep. This one was awesome. Great facade, great storytelling, creepy, probably the scariest house I've been to so far. It's definitely one of the top ones of the year for sure. Very much enjoyed it. Anyway, I think we're gonna do another original house in this corner of the park, and we'll see where the night takes us from there. Our next house is Puppet Theater, Captive Audience. Let's check it out. Here's the outside of the Puppet Theater house. So you can see it's like an old dilapidated theater. Apparently it's been hit by an earthquake. That's really cool looking. Definitely one of the strongest facades I've seen so far at HHN 2021. Very cool. Well, we still got a ways to go to actually get to it, so I'll share my thoughts on the house when I get out. Here's an even closer look at the Puppet Theater. It's been collapsed. Looks real creepy. probably not the best idea to go in there, is it?
Looks like fun though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the show's gotten good reviews. So, all right, we're gonna go in and maybe catch a puppet show, I guess? I don't know. See you on the other side. So, Puppet Theater was honestly really impressive. I thought had some of the most unique character designs out of any of the houses. The concept was pretty unique of having this dilapidated puppet theater and all these like demented characters that were like trapped in there after the earthquake. Really spooky, definitely had some solid scares, really fun. So again, another top tier house that kind of defied expectations here at Halloween Horror Nights 30. All right, here's our last scare zone. Quote unquote scare zone at this point. I don't think any of these are really scare zones. They're all just glorified photo ops, honestly. Probably the one thing this year that's been disappointing is the lack of actual good scare zones. Icons was another excellent house. Very well themed, definitely tied in very well to all, like most of the past icons of Halloween Horror Nights. Really strong house, great way to end the night. Now I'm going to do a recap back in my room where I will rank all 10 of the Halloween Horror Nights 30 houses. So back to me in my room. All right, so I am back in my room, and actually this is the day after because we didn't get home till about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, so I wasn't really up to doing a recap then. But I did want to share my overall thoughts on Halloween Horror Nights 30. First of all, very enjoyable event. I definitely think there were some pretty good highs and some disappointing lows. Every year always has something that's really, really good and something that's really, really not, and I'll get to that in a second. I will admit that I did miss one thing. I did not get to see the Marathon of Mayhem show this year. which is the water fountain projection show. I wanted to, but considering I only went to the event 2 times, I'm going to try to go a third, so if I do, I'll update my review. But in case I don't go again, I saw everything else, so I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about are the scare zones, and honestly, this was the big letdown of the year. Scare zones, I think, are an important part of HHN because it's something you can just walk around and do. You can kind of enjoy the atmosphere. It's kind of fun to see the characters like chase after your friends, and you know, it's a different feel than going through a house. And in the past, HHN has put out some pretty impressive scare zones. But over the past couple years, they've definitely started transitioning less towards trying to make an area with impressive sets and characters, and more glorified photo ops. And this year was literally the worst example of that. Of the 5 scare zones in the park this year, 4 of them were glorified photo ops. The vast majority of them were like a mini stage and then a character or sometimes characters on it who just pose for photos. And there were some props that were literally just there to be photos. So it's pretty disappointing, honestly. The only one that was not like that was the Terror Queen scare zone in the Central Park area. That area is usually one of the best, if not the best, scare zone in the whole event. And this year it was no exception. That one, although I do think they did better scare zones in that area than this one, but it was nice to see a reference to the Islands of Adventure years of HHN, and it was also nice to actually have a scare zone that wasn't a glorified photo op, so I appreciate that. But overall, not a good year for scare zones. 4 out of the 5 are not great. They were all pretty much glorified photo ops. There were a lot of references to old HHN events, which is cool. But there's a lot of that this year, but it makes sense as an anniversary year. By far the worst scare zone, honestly, is the one that was in New York this year. I don't get it. Like, it's supposed to be aliens, and like, I just saw a bunch of dudes in suits and some really bad props that looked like they were recycled from previous years. As you saw from the video, I really didn't understand that scare zone at all, especially because the New York area is typically where they can go kind of the biggest and most bombastic in terms of scare zones, and this year was just not good at all, honestly. So overall, pretty disappointed in the scare zones, but the houses and the one show that I saw made up for it. So before we talk about the houses and I get to my rankings, let me talk about Nightmare Fuel. Obviously, I did a little review the first night that I went to HHN, and I really liked Nightmare Fuel. I thought it was basically Bill and Ted, but minus the comedy, and instead you get kind of Cirque du Soleil and acrobatics. Pretty good. Obviously, I would prefer Bill and Ted to come back. I don't think that's going to happen. I'd love to be proven wrong, but we'll see. But I enjoyed the show. I thought it was an interesting interpretation. You got lots of impressive effects, lots of fire, lots of sexy dancing. It was a good time. So I like the show. I do think it's better than the Academy of Villains shows that were in that spot before. Basically, Universal's been struggling to find a show that really captures people like Bill and Ted used to. I think Nightmare Fuel is probably the closest they've come. So I wouldn't mind if it came back next year, or they do a new version of it next year. We'll see. There are lots of rumors that space might not be available next year, but we won't know until find out when they announce next year's stuff. But I enjoyed that show. I thought it was good. I wish I could have seen Marathon of Mayhem, because 2019, that was an outstanding show, honestly. I thought that was the best of the 2 shows that we had at the park. Mostly because of the IPs involved. I mean, you can't go wrong with Ghostbusters, Killer Clowns, and Stranger Things for an 80s aesthetic, so that was pretty cool. Alright, let's get to brass tacks. Now we are going to talk about my overall rankings for the 10 houses. Now, before I get started, I did want to mention, because of their HHN Light event that they did last year, I have done all the houses. I didn't do 2 of them this year, so both Bride of Frankenstein Lives and Tooth Fairy I did not get to experience in the 2 nights that I went. If I am, for some reason, able to go back for a third, I will definitely try to check those 2 out, as well as relive some of my favorites. But I wasn't able to get to those 2. but I didn't mind that much because I've already seen them. So the ranking is based on my recollection of them from last year. Obviously, it would have been better if I could have done them again, but you know, I have done them. They didn't change the mazes at all. They're the same mazes, so that's just how it is. So just want to keep that in mind, that my recollection of those two houses are specifically from last year's HHN Light event. Beetlejuice I actually did this year, in addition to the preview last year. So let's go ahead and get to the ranking. Okay, so number 10 is going to be Bride of Frankenstein Lives. And I just wasn't a huge fan of that house. Like, the other Universal Monsters houses that they've done, I thought were really impressive. They did a really good job of kind of modernizing the classic Universal Monsters, but not overdoing it. This one seemed a little more ham-fisted. Like, obviously, they're trying to focus on the bride instead of the classic monsters, which, I mean, it's basically Universal Monsters, the feminist version. Which I have no problem with the Bride of Frankenstein. I think she's an interesting character, kind of. But, I don't know. I just wasn't sold on this one as I was for the previous Universal Monsters houses that they've done, so it was okay. It also doesn't help that this was a particularly strong year for houses. Like, even this one, which I rank as my least favorite house, is better than a lot of years, like even middle to upper tier houses. It's not a bad house at all, but I don't think it was as strong as the other ones. And there's a lot of very strong houses this year. So, Bride of Frankenstein, number 10. Number 9 is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that one, I appreciated it for what it was. The set design was great. Probably one of the scarier houses this year. I know a lot of people have been complaining online about, oh, HHN is not scary. Personally, I don't care about that, mostly because I'm not going to these events to be scared. I'm going to these events to have a good time, to enjoy walking through these really immersive mazes. The jump scares are there, yeah, sure, whatever, but like, I consider them more startling than scary. So I enjoyed it. I will probably never see that movie. It just doesn't appeal to me. But they did a good job with immersion. The set design was great. The smells were interesting. And there were definitely some solid scares. Obviously, you heard a lot of revving chainsaws, but it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so that makes sense. So, good house. Probably would have been a lot higher in certain other years, but this year, just because of how strong the rest of the lineup was, I'm putting it near the bottom. So number 9 for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Number 8 is Welcome to Scary, and I liked this house a lot. The main thing I liked about it is the fact that if you've been coming to HHN for a long time and know about the lore of Halloween Horror Nights, there's a lot of references to past houses and other events in this house. Of course, a lot of the supernatural events that are referenced in many of the original houses for Halloween Horror Nights take place in Cary, Ohio, which is apparently the hometown of one of the original directors of Halloween Horror Nights. So that's why it's referenced in so many different things. So this was kind of a best of house that showcases a lot of the houses based on events that happened in Cary, Ohio. I liked it a lot. I thought it was really good. I think if you're not familiar with the lore of HHN, it might not appeal as much to you as some of the other houses, just because there's a lot of little things to unpack there. But I liked it. I thought it was fun, and I did appreciate the references because I am a Halloween Horror Nights nerd. So, Welcome to Scary, number 8. Number 7 is Tooth Fairy. This one impressed me, honestly, when I did it. I didn't expect much because, like, Knott's Berry Farm had a Tooth Fairy house that I didn't do, but I've seen video footage and stuff of, and, like, it just didn't look pleasant. This one was a lot different than I expected. I expected it to be very tooth-focused. This one was like a spooky, like, Grimm's fairy tale. The fairies were less fairies and more like little tiny monsters. Like, it was an interesting thing. I like the fact that the whole house was narrated. Oddly enough, it's not the only house that was narrated. We'll get to the other one later on. But I thought it was really well done. It was a really impressive house, especially for a soundstage house. I like the fact that the original houses this year are getting a lot more limelight than they were in the past. Obviously, the original houses, they put a lot of thought and creativity into. The IP houses are what keep people in the door, but especially in a year like this year, an anniversary year, I'm glad that the focus is more on the original houses than the IP houses. So, Tooth Fairy, solid house. I enjoyed it. I kind of wish I could have done it again. I will if I get one more opportunity, but I liked it. I thought it was a good house. Number 6 is The Haunting of Hill House. And again, I might appreciate this one more if I've seen the show. I haven't. It was good. It was a nice, really creepy looking house. The facade was excellent. It had a lot of cool special effects. Very unnerving. Felt like a good classic haunted house, but with a lot higher budget than most haunted houses. It was fun. Do I think I would appreciate more if I've seen the show and actually understood what half the things going on were? Absolutely. But for what it was, I enjoyed it. I think it was a good house. Glad I was able to do it. So number 6 for Haunting of Hill House. Number 5 is Beetlejuice. And honestly, I expected to rank this one a lot higher on the list, but the originals were so strong, I can't really justify it. Beetlejuice was great. I was very, very excited to be able to do the quote-unquote preview weekend last year when they had to open it for Halloween weekend. And this year was just as good. It was really fun. Lots of great references to the movie. It's not really scary. It's just a fun house that has a lot of fun references to the movie. So if you're a big fan of Beetlejuice, I think you'll definitely enjoy the house. It was a good time. So number 5, I think, is a very strong, solid spot for Beetlejuice. Number 4, Icons Recaptured. This one I appreciated a lot. Obviously, again, like a lot of the houses this year, if you are familiar with Halloween Horror Nights lore, you'll appreciate this one a lot more. And of course, it focuses on the icons, which for several decades, basically up to 20, every year had either a different icon or an icon brought back. And it was cool to see kind of most of them all in one place and getting their own proper time to shine. Of course, at the end of the house, one big moment is they have a throne, and they always have one of the icons on it randomly. So when I went through, it was the storyteller, which is cool. But yeah, I enjoyed that house a lot. It was fun. Definitely goes through kind of the different generations of Halloween Horror Nights past, and it does a great job of giving the backstory behind all of the icons a time to shine. So I really liked it. I thought it was a really strong house. Number 4 for Icons Recaptured. Number 3, Puppet Theater. Very original, very unique. Definitely not a concept you normally see for a Halloween house. And I thought it was really cool, the whole backstory of the earthquake that broke it apart, and then everybody trapped inside kind of went insane. And it was a cool backstory. It was well done. The makeup work and the character designs were super impressive. Probably my favorite out of the entire event. It wasn't that scary. It had a few startling moments, and it was definitely a disturbing looking house, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very strong, very fun, definitely something different than you would normally see at a Halloween haunt event. So number 3 for Puppet Theater. Very good house. Number 2, Wicked Growth. That's the big one that everybody has been gushing over the entire event, and I see why. I should probably have ranked Wicked Growth number 1. The one I ranked first, I had to. Wicked Growth is very good. The whole Pumpkin Lord concept is interesting. The character designs were great. There was a very impressive set design. That was the big thing that impressed me. Puppet Theater and Wicked Growth were both spring tent houses this year. And Universal this year specifically did a really good job of kind of defying the expectations of the various locations that they normally use, because usually there's kind of a stigma when you find out, oh, this house is in a spring tent, or oh, they use Shrek for this house. This year, honestly, the ones that you normally would expect to be not as good were the best houses of the year. And Wicked Growth being a spring tent house is definitely one of them. They did a terrific job. Really impressive. Definitely a different take than I was expecting from a pumpkin-based house, but it was really solid. So, number 2 for Wicked Growth, very strong runner-up. And my favorite house of Halloween Horror Nights 30 was Case Files Legendary Truth. I really liked that house. I thought the whole detective story was a very interesting angle. Was it scary? No, not really. It had really impressive set design. Honestly, probably my favorite set design, the whole thing. Like, the fact that they used sections of the New York City set at Universal Studios and baked them into the lore of Halloween Horror Nights is awesome. Like, the Kitty Cat Club is there. That's on the New York set. Boris Schuster, who is the the detective, he just has a window in the New York section, and they turned him into a whole character. That's awesome. I love the narration. I love the fact that it was basically like a film noir mystery combined with monsters. It was great. Highly underrated house. My favorite of the year. Very, very strong. And there you go. So overall, I really enjoyed Halloween Horror Nights 30 this year. I wish I could have gone more times. I hope I can still make it one more time, but if not, I still got to see pretty much everything, and I'm pretty content with that. Thanks to Matt and Makana for joining me for the 2 nights that I have gone. Obviously, if I do another one, I'll share that here. But I wanted to make this kind of a defined ending in case I don't get to go one more time. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Thrill Seekers Adventures from Halloween Horror Nights, and probably our last Halloween Spooktacular video, assuming I don't get to go back to HHN, but we'll see. Thanks for watching. If you're new around here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell. That way you know when new videos drop. And I hope you enjoyed all the stuff we released this year for Halloween Spooktacular. I'd say it's one of our stronger years because we did both Hallowscream and HHN. Maybe next year we can do more events. Here's hoping. That's going to do it, and I will see you next time on Thrill Seekers Adventures as part of Halloween Spooktacular. Bye-bye.